Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Teaching English Facebook page, and welcome to this live and interactive event with the British Council's Teaching English. This event is to mark International Women's Day, and we're going to be discussing gender and access to education. I'm Naomi, and I'm joined with a panel of expert educators from the MENA region. We have Hala, we have Omar, and we have Reem. And today we're going to be looking at how gender can play a role in access to education. And we're going to hopefully have a look at some ideas about how we can achieve gender equity. And this is a really important topic for both our learners, but also for us as teachers. And we also need to acknowledge that gender is not the only barrier to education, but I think we can all agree that women and girls are disproportionately affected. So let's start by meeting our panelists. So everyone, please introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the work you do and how it's related to this topic. So let's start with Hala. She's in the top corner there.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Hala Ahmed, and I'm head of English and school education at the British Council in Egypt. I've been working for the British Council for 15 years. I started as a teacher, then I did and played several roles. And my main area is to work on development programming and continuous professional development programs for teachers. And I do work with teachers, males and females, who come from different parts of Egypt.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hala. That's great. And now on to Omar. Can you introduce yourself, Omar?
Oh, sorry, I lost it. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Omar Altamimi. I am the English program coordinator at the British Council in Republic of Yemen. I started working with the British Council 3 years ago. Our work is mainly with the Ministry of Education. We work in building the capacity of the English language teachers and educators, male and females, across the country. We are trying to utilize different approaches because of the risk situation. So we work online, face-to-face. I mean, even we use the radio broadcasting to reach as many teachers as we can. During my work, we work with over 1,500 teachers across the country. And we are planning to expand our work.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Omar. And now, Reem. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Naomi, and hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Reem. I am based in Cairo. I'm a gender consultant. I'm based in Cairo, Egypt. I'm a gender consultant. I have worked on education, on gender, intersecting with many sectors, such as the private sector, environment, healthcare, violence, everything, and education as well. I've worked on the education in the primary stage, all stages of education, in addition to technical and vocational training and higher education as well. I do teach community development at the American University in Cairo as well. Had the great opportunity to work with the British Council on several assignments too. I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you.
Wow, welcome everyone. That's fantastic. And welcome to our audience. We've got, I see we've got someone here from Egypt in the audience, from Thailand, from Libya. What a great audience here today. And everyone in the audience, if you have any questions for our panelists, just pop them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them throughout the session. And so I want to also ask our audience to chime in on this topic as well. While we begin talking, audience, what do you think the biggest barrier is to girls and women's education in your region? And if you could pop your answers to that in the chat, that would be wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to hand this question over to our panelists now and ask, what do you think the key challenges are from your experience that prevent equal access to education? Who would like to start with this one? Anyone?
Hala, can you go ahead? Yeah.
I can start. Yes, I
Cool.
think there is a combination of factors, really, Naomi. So for girls' education in Egypt, for example, maybe it's the cultural norms and the gender roles that women and girls are supposed and are perceived to play in a country like Egypt and some parts of it. So you might see that girls are not usually encouraged to join STEM subjects, for example, engineering, medicine, etc. So they are more encouraged to work in humanities. We still have girls and women who join STEM subjects and STEM studies, but when they are being consulted, through their families or through their friends, they are not really encouraged to go down this route. So there is a cultural norm to take the easiest and the fastest route in education rather than taking the more challenging, difficult route in medicine and engineering, for example. I think another factor also is the economic situation and the financial resources. So when a family has several members, boys and girls, they tend to prioritize the boys and they spend more and invest more in their education more than they do with the girls. So the girls are sent to sometimes are sent to regular schools, whereas boys are more encouraged to be sent to international schools and access prestigious opportunities, etc.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you, Hala. Actually, the first point you made about the STEM education rings quite true to me. Back when I was in high school, I think I would have done very well personally if I'd studied a STEM subject, but I was encouraged more towards the humanities, and I do think that was probably gender focused back then. And I wish in a way that I'd gone in that direction. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Reem or Omar, would you like to answer this question as well?
I agree with Hela that it's social norms, but I also think that any other structural barriers, any other economic barriers, any other infrastructural barriers, logistical barriers, all come back down to norms. So, for instance, if we say unsafe roads, parents are more likely to send their boys than to their girls to venture through the unsafe roads, right? If we say the poverty, then boys are prioritized. So any of the other barriers really come down to social norms and the preference, also the opportunity, because oftentimes they see men as boys to grow up to be as men, and they have an opportunity to maybe even travel, or whereas girls, the investment is quite limited. So at the end of the day, any of the barriers really comes down back to norms and cultural norms and traditions.
Yeah, very, very good point. Omar, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yes, first of all, I agree with Hala and Reem because of the cultural norms and the nature of the society here just creates a barrier for girls for education. However, in my country, because of the civil war and the conflict that has been ongoing for a while, so there's also the infrastructure damage, specifically in my country. Many schools have been destroyed. So that's a huge issue for girls and boys. For girls specifically, because of usually there is a tendency for parents to send their girls to the nearby schools, but because of the war, it wasn't that's easy anymore. Another thing. If you look to the rural areas, usually there's a lack of the female teachers, so it's not easy to have female teachers. This deters some of the parents to send their schools. And even for the schools that you have, you will find a problem with the facilities. The bathrooms. The specific needs for the girls cannot be met. So all of these things add up to the barriers for girls' education.
Yeah, those are all really, really great and interesting points. We have a comment here from Hagar Fazal saying about returning mother students. So I guess that's if girls when they get pregnant at a younger age, having issues returning to education after that. Is that something you've encountered in your experience? Anyone?
This is actually something that it's a very valid point, and I think it differs between countries in the region. Some countries allow female students to go back to regular enrollment in school. They actually go to school. Some countries, although that's not a written rule, but we've seen from our work that some countries allow students to enroll at distance, so they are not allowed to go to school, but they're allowed to get their degree. But it's still a barrier, right? Because they're not given the opportunity to socialize and everything else that the school offers, besides the academic part. But again, again, back to my point is that, the reason why a lot of, some women, some girls at some point in education start to think about their other socially expected roles as mothers and wives, and then they rush into it. Or as Omar said, maybe there's some external factors like poor or economic circumstances that makes a family more likely to marry, to get their kid married early. And this is where, it starts by having the social expectation for a girl to be a mother and a wife, and then it has implications on their education and their return to school and things like that. But it's definitely something that we've seen, either because of family pressure or because of social pressure that gets to the girl. And when I have these conversations with my colleagues in the education sector throughout the region, really, and we're trying to kind of pinpoint the point in girls' education where they lose a little bit the enthusiasm about to education and focus, because when you look at middle school, when you look at primary school, girls really excel, and even girls who continue to higher school, they do excel in education, and quite often in many countries they're better. And if you look at enrollment rate in different countries, sometimes the girls are more, right? It's just that at some point during the education journey, they start focusing on other things, which is their socially expected role. And then they have to navigate all of these things, returning to school and managing, household and
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, those are all great points. We have another very interesting comment here from Gifty, who's saying, from my context, some tribes still hold the views that boys are more intelligent than girls. And when we consider questioning in the classrooms, critical thinking questions, and they're sometimes forwarded to the boys. So I guess that's teachers, whether conscious or unconscious biases appearing in their classroom. Is this something you've encountered, Hala Ahmed, Omar?
Sorry. In my case, actually, it's quite the opposite. I mean, we noticed that girls are much better when it comes to education in schools. Girls excel. Either in primary school or secondary school, even on university. Girls are working very hard and much harder, and just they get better results. So that's not the reality.
Interesting. Yeah.
I can also add something on the unconscious bias here, Naomi, regarding this point of who's more intelligent than who. And I think it happens unintentionally in some of the course books that we came across in Egypt, when jobs are assigned to male characters by default. So, astronauts or space scientists or doctors are by default illustrated in the course books as males. And I think that's a perceived mental image that those highly intellectual jobs are better done through males, not females. So that's a very interesting comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think the course books one is really interesting, and I'd actually love to hear from our audience if they've noticed biases in their course books. I'll pop that up there if anyone wants to add in the comments about that. Have you noticed anything? And so if teachers notice biases in their course books, what would you suggest they do? Let's get a bit positive now.
This is partly what they should take that as an opportunity for discussion and, opening some gender topics in class, which happens in some countries in the region where teachers, they bring up these topics to foster more gender equality and kind of, raise awareness of students. And I think that's what they should do. And, unfortunately, they don't have a lot of control over the topics, but there's also sometimes they they're quite clear, like, astronauts are men, or pilots are men, and flight attendants are women, like Hala said. And by the way, that's across the region. There's a lot of literature that actually took school books from lots of countries in the region and analyzed them in terms of gender. But the bigger problem, even, it's not just the images, it's more of the hidden context. The language, the story, who's the focus of the story, the number of images. Some studies actually count how many images are of men, how many images of women, and even the image itself. Are women alone in the image, or how many independent images of women? How many independent? Usually, women are in images that are in the family context rather than in at their jobs, or So I think the the kind of more hidden messages are very impactful. But I think if something is as clear as a girl is tidying up her brother's bed, teachers should really take that and discuss it, if they actually have the level of awareness to spot it and to kind of manage the discussion of that sort.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so
I also think Naomi, talking about gender equality in the day-to-day classroom activities is quite important, not for the sake of it, but just to reflect the reality. So we do have female doctors, we do have female engineers. The students have female doctors in their families. They know female doctors in their friend network. So if we want our teaching to be authentic, and if we want our classroom practices to reflect what's happening in real life, I think we need to tackle this, not just to skip it. And I'd like also to throw in another example, not from the teacher-student interaction, but through teacher trainer interactions. One in one of our CPD program, in the content there was something about the different genres of writing, magazines, articles, and there was something around lit chick. That's literature chicks, and that's a kind of that's a kind of magazines that are written specifically for women, and it's all about makeup and fashion. And I was there by accident. I was observing one of those, local committees of practice, and the teachers, as Reem said, took this point as a point of discussion, and it was very interesting to hear different views around how we can challenge the content that prescribed for us, whether as teachers or teacher educators.
That must have been a very interesting session. And were the teachers in the course all very receptive to discussing this?
Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. Some didn't know the meaning of lit chick, and when we explained the meaning, it wasn't it wasn't taken at face value. It wasn't taken for granted. It was like, no, there is chick. The word itself is not really respectable, and lit chick shouldn't be addressing women who are and women shouldn't all about makeup and fashion and accessories. There is much more things, and we tried to bring in examples from the society, women who are political leaders, or women who are leading on educational reform and stuff like that. So again, linking what happens in reality to what happens in the CPD programming or the teaching classroom is really important.
Very interesting. Yeah, very important. Now, Omar, I believe you have some experience with teacher trainers having some gender barriers within teacher training as well. And I believe you have some examples about how that was dealt with as well. Would you like to talk about that?
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, actually, I can relate to one of our work with the British Council. I mean, usually at the British Council, we arrange face-to-face trainings. Across the country for the teachers. However, there were situations in which female teachers could not attend, specifically because of, they have to move from one city to another city. So that's a huge issue because that was the only reason for not attending the training, is that they cannot move because of the social and the cultural barrier. However, at the British Council, we managed to overcome that. Just by offering the female teachers the chance to bring someone from the family, the chaperone, to come with them. That was a huge success. It returned to a positive number of the female teachers participating in the courses. So yeah, it is a barrier. However, just we manage somehow to overcome it.
That's great. Yeah, that's yeah. I think that's yeah. These barriers are not set in stone. They are all things that can be overcome in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We have some interesting comments here from the audience. Well, this is a very interesting question about accepting pregnant girls in school. I guess this is in, I'm not sure exactly what country Gifty is from, but cases where girls in school are kicked out because they're pregnant. And I mean, how do you feel about this? And I mean, what can teachers do to support this, do you think? Hala.
I think that's a pretty sensitive topic, to be honest, Naomi and everyone.
Yeah.
And it's not just here. It's not just about the lack of acceptance from the society. I mean, there is to begin with, there is a lack of acceptance from the society if junior students get pregnant. That's the first stage.
True. Very true. Yeah.
There is a lack of acceptance from the educational community inside the school and above when girl students get pregnant. But also for practical reasons, the schools and the education systems are not designed to absorb pregnant girls into the mainstream education system. So if we put the rejection and the social stigma aside, I think education systems in several countries can offer alternative routes for the pregnant girls to keep them engaged and to keep the access, and the accessibility is really key here. So it's not about their the status of the status they have in society, but it's about how far we support them to access education opportunities. So they can study remotely, they can study in special schools, they can have special classes, they can study at home. I mean we as educationalists can work and should work together on providing alternative routes for those girls to tackle and access their education without being excluded for whatever reason. And that's the idea, the overall objective of gender equality. It's about accessing your rights, and your right to education is a right for everybody, women, men, boys, and girls. So gender equality is about accessing your rights regardless of your gender, and that shouldn't be constrained about by your gender.
Thank you very much. That was really, that's very
can I add here a note? I mean, I agree with Hala that just we need to provide access to them. That's the main factor. However, just in my case in Yemen, I mean, Hala and Reem mentioned something about distant learning and remote learning. However, in my country, it's not possible because of the situation, the IT infrastructure. So digital learning just is impossible. I mean, for school girls. So this adds another dimension why just girls cannot access education.
Yeah, technology is quite a barrier to education for many as well. That's girls and boys.
I think pregnant students and mothers are allowed in schools in Yemen, though, Omar, right?
They are. I mean, just they are allowed. I mean, there are no problems. However, just let's look from a practical point of view. I mean, a pregnant girl in a malnutritious girl, just who's already suffering, just in the normal day-to-day activity, cannot just add the burden of going to school. So it's just for practical reasons they cannot go.
Sometimes, there are other factors at play as well. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to move on now. So we've had a look at some of the barriers that are in place, and I'd be very interested to talk about any experience you have of policies or programs that have been put in place to reduce some of these barriers to access to education that you've experienced or you've witnessed. I mean, Reem, would you like to start on this?
Sure. I think it's it really depends on the country and the barrier, and there are lots of good examples on progress that's been done in that area. And the one example that I think is quite good in terms of not just access to girls, but even access to students with intersectional vulnerabilities or intersectional marginalization, who are, for instance, poor girls, or disabled poor girls, or even disabled poor boys, just students.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and I think if we take Morocco's example in reaching the communities in the High Atlas region who are geographically alienated from schools, they only have primary schools there. Once students finish primary school, it's a really long road and unsafe to get to a preparatory school or a middle school, as it's called in some countries. And the government, the king, I think specifically, did quite a lot of work in starting boarding schools, so that where girls, specifically girls, who, because obviously when that happens, parents don't send their girls to school. They can send their boys because they can walk more, or but they don't send their girls. And once there was a political will, and the king started that initiative, a lot of NGOs started creating some of these schools as well, where girls are they live in the school. Parents are they are not worried about the road, but they're also not worried about where the girls are living, right? Because the other option, they live in private accommodation, and it's very difficult for such young girls. And it provided up an opportunity. So it's basically one of the great examples. There's a lot of other initiatives in Morocco in that sense, and elsewhere, but I thought that was like a very clear education policy change in education policy that is responding to a very clear problem, and it had great results. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That's really interesting. Yeah, I can see how that could be a very positive program. Omar, have you got any examples of policies or programs that have been particularly effective?
I mean, in Yemen, and they started the Directorate of Inclusive Education, and in which they focus specifically on these issues. So there are some positive moves from the Ministry of Education, along with international organizations, just to address these questions and try to solve them. However, it's a long way. Now, let's face the reality. It's a long way. I mean, just we are at war. I mean, people are getting killed. I mean, there are one of every 4 schools has been destroyed. So there is some positive indication. However, the reality is just is far from being perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I hope it starts to improve soon.
Yeah. I mean.
Okay, I'll hand over to Hala for any examples you have of positive policies or programs.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying in our programs at the British Council to remove the barriers to access proper continuous professional development opportunities for both men and women, really. Because again, women are stereotyped that they need to focus more on taking care of their households rather than investing their time and effort in professional development. Men are also stereotyped equally to focus more on how to provide more financial resources to their households rather than investing their time and effort in professional development. And we responded to both groups differently, but also to achieve equity. So, for example, when our local communities of practice, we call it in Egypt the teacher activity groups. This is where the teachers come together every Saturday to share ideas and experiences. And Saturdays is a weekend in Egypt. So when we had requests from female teachers that Saturday is a weekend that they need to take care of their babies and their households, we shifted our delivery model to online delivery so that they can attend the teacher activity groups, participate look after their professional development, but also without, neglecting their households and their babies. For another policies we're adopting is also to open opportunities for teachers in Egypt to be involved in conferences nationally and internationally, as a way of incentives and as a way of, showing them that this is important to develop yourself professionally, regardless of your gender and regardless what role you're playing in your household, whether you're the provider or the carer.
That sounds really positive. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm afraid we're running out of time here. This 30 minutes has absolutely zoomed by. So I just want to ask if you have any final words on this topic, all three of you. So Reem, if there's anything final you'd like to say at this point.
Just that I think part of the road forward, road ahead is partnerships, right? Like the British Council working with, the ministry, working with NGOs. And I think this kind of really tackles a lot of the dimensions of the issue and provides more accessibility.
Brilliant, yes. Yes, Omar, any final words?
Yes, I mean, the key is raising awareness and clearing misconceptions. I mean, that's the way to start.
Yeah. And Hala, for you, any final words?
I'll just take it from Omar's final words. Misconceptions. So gender equality is not about making men and women the same. It's about empowering them to access their opportunities, access their rights, making them able to make life decisions without confined or restricted by their gender. And everybody can play a role, and it starts with the small things. It starts from inside the classroom, from your day-to-day teaching activities, the way you design your lessons, the way you deliver them, the way you engage your students. So that's really key. You don't have to be a scientist in gender, but everybody can play a role, even if it's a small role.
Thank you very much. Those are wonderful final words. And thank you everyone so much for coming here today. And thank you for our audience for your interesting questions and comments. And thank you to Hala, Omar and Reem for fascinating discussion. I've really enjoyed this. So I'm going to sign off now, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.